I did this program with Tribeca last year, and Paula Weinstein, she said when she was an executive in the 70s, it was all about counting. Oh, I'm the only woman in the room. And there was a certain pride in that. Mm-hmm. And I think all of us have that, like, oh, I'm one of the 15%. And I think that is a terrible attitude. Yeah. And I think we need to not be happy to be the only woman in the room. And we need to be helpful and supportive and understand that it's not a good thing to be part of an elite percentage. And we need to lift each other up and help each other.
You're listening to The Other 50%, a history of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where we talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. In this episode, I got to speak with Kat Coiro. Kat is a writer and director who has directed films, commercials, and television, most recently The Mick. She's also directed The Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce and her own film called And While We Are Here. She has also plenty of acting credits under her belt, but feels that directing sits much better with what she wants her artistic expression to be. We talked about embracing failure, prioritizing family, and how reassuring everyone that you can do the job is, in fact, part of the job. You can find us at theother50%.com to see bios, photos, my musings on the blog, the coffee cups, the t-shirts. You can find us on iTunes, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all the places. And we are now available on Stitcher. So find us there and tell all your friends about that. And I have another podcast called The Other 50%, a history of tech. You can also find it on iTunes, Stitcher, and on the Other 50% website. That's where I talk to successful women in tech and hear their stories. Okay, here's Kat. What is your job?
Hi.
Let's get right into it.
I am a director and also a writer.
Excellent. So you are a unicorn.
Yes, I like that.
Do you direct film or TV?
I started off doing feature films and then went into commercials and just recently jumped over to television.
Okay, let's go back to the beginning. How did you start in this business in the first place?
I went to performing arts high school where I did theater.
In New York?
In northern Michigan, boarding school called Interlochen.
Cool.
It's really cool.
Boarding performing arts school?
Yeah.
That must have been the funnest thing in the whole wide world.
It's really amazing. I in fact, I teach there every summer now and bring my children up there because it's in the middle of the woods and
oh, how fun.
It's just kind of it's like a military boot camp for arts. So very disciplined.
I want to go there now.
I know, it's the best. So I started pretty young doing theater, and then I went to Carnegie Mellon.
Acting?
Yeah, acting. And I did, I dabbled around with directing, although as a kid who didn't come from a show business family, there were no real female archetypes.
Yeah.
So I would say, I want to be a director, but it didn't really feel like something I could really be. And so I was an actor because that was a very accessible thing to be.
Like that, you can figure out what that looks like.
Yeah. You look around and there's a lot of actresses. So I did that in school, and I graduated, and I started working in casting, and then did some acting, and really did not enjoy it.
What about it did you not like?
It made me self-conscious. I didn't like seeing things that I knew could be better, or at least seeing things where if it was bad, I could have had a hand in making it bad or making it good. Mm-hmm. There's something about being an actor that for me felt very out of control. I'd go see a film I was in or a television show, and I really had very little to do with the final result, the final product. And so it was through acting that I started to realize I wanted to make my own things. And so I started making shorts, really, no budget stuff with me in it. And then I started doing some stuff at Funny or Die.
Oh.
And I did this little 4-minute video called Idiots with Zoe Saldana, Kate Bosworth, and Janeane Garofalo. And it went viral.
Well, back up a minute. How'd you get those guys in your short? Did you know them?
I had met Kate. My husband and Kate did a movie together, so I knew her a little bit. But really, this is actually an interesting story. I remember, I approached Funny or Die about doing this little piece that I'd written, and I wanted to send it out to some fairly big actors, and the truth was I didn't think they would do it, and they all did it immediately. And I remember working with Zoe and Kate, and I kept thanking them for being there, because I couldn't believe, and there was no money, it was inconvenient, it was on a Saturday, and I kept thanking them, and I remember Zoe said, I've really rarely done a scene with just a woman, so this is actually a pleasure for me. And it was
so they jumped on it.
It was a revelation for me in terms of material and realizing that these huge, luminous stars, Zoe Saldana had not done a lot of scenes where she was just sitting at a table with another woman.
Yeah.
And it actually became a huge part in what moved my career forward, is realizing that and making material where women had scenes together.
Who knew that would be revolutionary?
It's true, and you look at even some of the best actresses with really meaty roles, and it's very rare to see women talking to each other. And
everything fails the Bechdel test, right?
Everything does. Everything does.
Now back it up again. How did you know, let me write something and approach Funny or Die?
Well, Funny or Die, at the time, and I think still is pretty amazing, because it's kind of like a little mini studio. Mm-hmm. And so if they like something, they will support it. And not with a lot of money, but with helping with crew and editing and locations. And so it was, I had heard that they were really helpful. Someone had introduced me to one of the guys over there, Mike Farah. Mm-hmm. And it was a really wonderful way to start making things with a little bit of support, and it was still very bare bones and no budget. But I think having Funny or Die involved also helped to get those ladies on board. And that little 4-minute piece was huge for me, because I got to work with that talent. I remember I kept saying, "Oh, I'm sorry. And Janeane Garofalo looked at me and can I swear?
Yes. I want to hear what Janeane said.
She looked at me and she's like, "You gotta stop fucking apologizing. You're in charge. You're the boss."
I love her.
I love her so much. And I looked at her and I said, I'm sorry, you're right. I'm so sorry. But I always think of Janeane, when I have those moments of doubt and think, oh, I'm not qualified to be in this position. I think of her like, don't fucking apologize.
Balls out, sister.
So I made that. It became very popular. I actually went to AFI right after that little video came out.
Which program?
To the directing program, the master's program. And then while I was there, I had this little script that I'd written. It was the first script I'd ever written. I wrote it with Kristen Ritter. And Kate, after doing the Funny or Die, said she wanted to be in it. And so I got a call saying, "Oh, we've got financing for your movie." And it was $300,000, not a lot.
Wait, someone called you and said, "Here's the money for your movie"?
Yeah.
Who raised the money?
Well, it was a businessman from Louisiana, and he wanted to do this female-driven comedy. And so I dropped out of AFI and shot it in 16 days.
Okay, so this wasn't your student film.
No, they wouldn't let me stay, and it's always been... I said, let me just go direct this movie. It'll take 2 weeks, and I'll come back. And they said, no, you can't do that. You can't leave. And I was really sad, because I liked the program, and I wanted to continue.
But if the point is to launch you into the world...
That's what I
Mission accomplished.
So I went and I did that feature, and it was nuts. I mean, we didn't have an AD. There was no location scout. It had, multiple babies and dogs in starring roles, which
all the hard things.
As you get older, you realize never do a movie with babies and dogs. But I didn't know. I was, very young and green, and so that was called Life Happens, and we ended up selling it to Universal.
Great.
And Kate and I then, she had such a great time doing that film, and I really loved working with her, because she's one of those actresses who's often played the beautiful girl and the girlfriend, and it was really fun to give her a platform to play something totally different.
Yeah.
Kind of ballsy, badass woman.
Great.
So she wanted to work together again, and I wrote a script called While We Were Here for her, and we got $150,000, and we went and shot it with a 5D camera, a DP, a sound guy, 3 actors in Italy, and I was 8 months pregnant.
That has all the elements of a really good story.
And we shot it in 11 days.
Where in Italy?
On the island of Ischia.
I worked on a movie in Ischia.
What?
The Tales of Mr. Ripley shot there.
Yes. Love that movie.
Love that island.
Magical. Beautiful.
Yes. Did you ride around on a Vespa?
Well, I didn't ride on the Vespa because I was so pregnant.
Yeah.
But they ride a Vespa in the movie, of course.
As you do.
You must. And that movie was very difficult. You know, we dropped down and we stole all our locations, and we had no hair, makeup, nothing. When I say nothing, people say, "Oh, I made a small budget movie," and I say,
Well, half your budget went to airfare.
Yes, most of the budget went to airfare.
And it sounded like your crew was 5 people?
Well, it was producer, me, DP, and sound guy / editor. So 4-person crew, including myself, and then 3 actors. Everyone else in the movie is just grabbed from the street, or the guy who actually runs the restaurant, or, it's very, very hard scrabble, renegade filmmaking.
Oh, great, though. Who brought the donuts?
There were donuts. That's what they eat in Italy for breakfast, sweets.
Yes.
So, came back, had my son, and then edited that film, and it premiered at Tribeca, and we sold it to Well Go Entertainment, and they actually opened it in 18 theaters.
Wow. Which
was kind of crazy for such a tiny little film.
Nice.
And I love that film.
Is that film available on?
It's on
digital?
iTunes.
Can we get it somewhere?
Yeah, okay. You can get it everywhere.
Okay, good. We'll get it.
I'll give you a copy, in fact.
Even better. Come to my house, you guys will watch it.
So then I started writing television shows. I was kind of a little bit disenchanted with filmmaking at the micro budget level, because it's really hard.
It's hard.
It takes a lot of energy.
And then was it hard to then get a job directing a studio film?
Oh, I would say virtually impossible.
Yeah, I hear men don't have that same experience.
No, you look at it and it's very rare for a woman to make a small film and then jump into a studio movie. Yeah, I mean, there is one, I believe I went out for one studio film after, and I made these, fairly successful movies for nothing.
Yeah.
And I thought that should count for something. That should give me some kind of credibility. Imagine if I had money. Imagine if I had, an AD. What could I do?
But now it's like, oh, you can make tiny little movies that make money.
Well,
Good job.
That's the thing is, I kind of had a choice to keep making these micro budget films, and I did have other kind of million and under films offered to me, and I decided not to do it because I didn't think it would help me move into the next category, because people would see my film, they would really like it, and they'd say, but it's so small.
Yeah.
And I remember I went in for one studio film right after I directed and while we were here, and it was a great meeting, and then they said, yeah, but the movie's a little small. It's hard for us to know what, how you would transition into the studio film. But who is that actor in your movie? And I said, oh, Jamie Blackley. And it was his first big role, Jamie. And I said, he's amazing. I would recommend him for anything. And they ended up hiring a documentary filmmaker, a man who'd never done a narrative feature, and they cast Jamie.
Well, that seems fair. That seems fair.
But I was glad for Jamie because he's the best. But yeah, that was definitely, I felt that I had come to a crossroads where I could keep making tiny films, or I could move on to something that would help me move on to bigger projects. So I moved to television.
So you were really conscious of that as it was happening?
I was and am very conscious of the fact that there's a direct correlation between the percentage of women doing certain projects and the money involved. And you'll look at all these articles about, Sundance was 50% women, and this is usually in documentaries, which have the least amount of money. And then you'll go to the very small budget films, and it's pretty equal. Then you go into studio films, and it's just a precipitous drop.
Suddenly it's 2%.
And the worst is commercials, which is where the most money is. I believe it's 9%, registered in the advertising world, 9% registered. And so that means probably 2 to 3% are actually working. So there's a lot of talk about progress, which I'm glad for, because I think having it be a part of the conversation is very important. But a lot of this equality is coming in the lower budget where there is no money. And so, part of what I'm working to do is to get out of that. I don't want to work in the micro budget world anymore.
Fair enough. So walk us through the next pieces of your journey, because you did do some commercial directing?
Yes. So after I did the movies, I started selling television shows and trying to get into commercials. And I started working with a small production company in the commercial side. And
which one?
Concrete and Clay, they're called now. Mike Brady kind of championed me. He was really the only person who would even meet with me. And again, I'm like, I can make miracles happen. I can make something out of nothing. But
I can make a whole movie for my commercial day rate.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so I started working with Michael. At the time, he was at Hello and Company. And he's just been an amazing champion for me, really just sending me out. So I've now done a nice handful of commercials, and that's been a wonderful experience, because I get to work with lots of resources and amazing crews. And so I've really enjoyed doing commercials. And I sold 3 network comedies to ABC and NBC. And I'm developing another cable show right now. And so, so I made the transition to television as a writer, actually. And then... Have they made pilots of the shows you sold? No. I just developed them, and I'm very glad that none of my shows became pilots. It's a real learning curve, learning to develop for the networks, and I wouldn't want to go into being a showrunner without really understanding that world. So I had a great time developing the shows. But then I realized that I wanted to get into episodic directing. And so that seems to be the place where the opportunity is, for real. They're really making a push in a genuine and awesome way. I did my first television show through the NBC Universal Diversity Fellowship. So I shadowed 3 episodes of The Girlfriend's Guide to Divorce, and then I love that show. I directed the 3rd season, 5th episode. Great. Loved it. Beautiful people. Wonderful show. Inspiring to work with Marty Noxon, who's just a powerhouse and an amazing director and writer and boss lady. So that was my first show, and then I came back from that and immediately jumped into shooting an episode of The Mick. I did the 5th episode, or the 8th episode of season 1, and then they brought me back to do episode 13, which aired last night. Congratulations. And I'm doing another show called Alone Together for ABC Freeform that's produced by the Lonely Island guys. It's a really fun show. And I've also been working, CBS has a diversity program where they're doing a great job. They're doing mixers. They're bringing people into the fold. And it's so much about just having people feel comfortable with you. So I'm very proud. Well, you should be. They say it's through the diversity program, you get your first episode, but they're saying that the second one is really the hardest one to get, and you're in. You've done it. and it suits my skills. I feel very, very comfortable doing television. You know, the indie filmmaking has definitely helped with the pace. Yeah. And the speed. And then again, working with these crews who are getting paid well and are union
They're
and
pros.
are really good at what they do is just a pleasure and an honor. So
Did it seem so easy
it did
compared to 11 days in East? Yeah.
No, it seemed very easy. I mean, with television directing, it's so much about stepping into a world that exists and is functioning, very high functioning, and bringing something positive to it, bringing new energy, bringing new ideas, but also fitting into this world that exists and exists before you come and exists after you leave.
Yeah. Now, how do you do that? Because do you ever hit resistance? How do you bring yourself in there in an authoritative but not threatening kind of? Do you think about all those things as you go in?
I really think about, do your homework, prepare, know that script like the back of your hand, know what little moments you're going to bring in that help elevate the show. And then energetically, people are working long hours. They're working nonstop. And so I find a lot of my job is coming in and reminding people this is an amazing show. And you guys are doing a great job. Because it's very hard when you're in it and you're, just working those long hours 5 days a week and you forget. And so as a director, I feel that a big portion of my job is just reminding them how wonderful the show is and bringing that enthusiasm and energy. And it's why, I really only want to do shows that I genuinely like because you want to bring that genuine energy into it.
Yeah, and when you already like the show and like the characters and like the people. Now, can you tell, this is just my own curiosity,
sure.
Can you tell walking onto a set, you know how some sets are very functional and some sets are very dysfunctional,
yes.
and it seems like if a show starts out dysfunctional, it's never going to recover. It's just going to be torture the whole way through. Can you tell walking in what kind of situation you're walking into?
Well, I think that's a huge part of the job is being able to gauge. It's about gauging what people need. And that is your job as a director, is to give people what they need, be positive, appreciate that everyone has their own process. I've been really lucky to work on shows that are genuinely functional and just a pleasure. And I guess one piece of advice I would have is shadow. Go shadow. If you get a job, go in the week before and watch how the set functions. Because when I was assigned to Girlfriend's Guide and I found out I had to shadow 3 episodes, coming from directing features, directing commercials, directing countless shorts.
Were you like, really?
I was like, are you kidding me? I have to go shadow 3. I loved it. I loved every second of it. And I was resistant. I thought that's too much. I'm really experienced. I don't need to shadow 3 episodes. And I was absolutely wrong. It was the best thing I could have done. And having had that experience and having had my episode go so smoothly, partly because of that experience, just knowing people's names is a huge part of the job. That if you just jump in on day one and you don't know people's names, it's a huge disadvantage. And so when I booked the Mick immediately after, I went in the week before and just hung out on set and watched how the actors worked, who likes a lot of notes, who doesn't like a lot of notes, where do the writers fit in? How much do they interact? How much do they sit back and watch? And there is no right way. It's really individual. It's based on the set and the dynamics of the set. And so I would say, if you do get the opportunity to direct, go and shadow. Watch.
Yeah.
Learn everybody's names.
Who's
get
the AD?
steeped.
What's their name?
Yeah. Because those people are going to be your allies.
Yeah.
And your best friends. And they're going to be the ones that'll help you if you get into a bind. And so that would be the one piece. If I'm going to give advice, I would say,
I want to hear it.
Go to set and shadow.
And it sounds like you have to have a pretty high EQ to go in and be effective.
Absolutely. Which is why I think women are fantastic at this job, because there is a difference between features and television. And television is extraordinarily collaborative. Mm-hmm. And I think women are really suited to it in that way, because it's not my vision, my way,
Because you also have writers and showrunners and all these other
and
people.
they have a
there.
huge voice, and it's their show. And
the actors are so invested in these characters.
Well, like, for example, on the Mick, Caitlin is an executive producer, and she's her comedic ability is unfathomably huge. And so you want her and you to have a copacetic relationship, and you want to feel comfortable, like, letting her weigh in. And if you go in with this kind of rigid attitude, it's just never going to work. Because
you have to let her be free.
She's amazing. Everyone on that show, the acting is really phenomenal. I actually love the Mick very much. I feel very lucky that was my second job.
Have you had to think much about how you communicate in this position?
I have thought about it a lot. I've thought about it. And I'm thinking about it right now.
In what way? Have you had to adjust kind of what you thought it would be compared to how you ended up being?
Look, I go back to the preparation. You prepare, you know that script better than anybody, better than the people who wrote it, and that is your job, so that when people have questions, you have an answer. But it doesn't necessarily have to be the answer. And I think that's the key, is having an answer, being completely confident in your vision, and then being ready to adjust that vision when an actor or a writer or a showrunner comes in with a thought, a note. I always feel that my job is to keep the big story in mind and to always remember how the scenes connect. I start my prep with the transitions from scene to scene, with the opening and the closing shots, because those bridges are very important. And when an actor is in a scene, it's not really their job to know exactly where, what came right before and what's coming right after. That's my job. And so preparation. Just do your work and then be ready to throw that work out the window.
I hear this a lot from women, actually, super preparing for these things. Are you also pretty involved in the editing process?
You have a director's cut, and the editor does a cut, then the director does a cut, and then it goes on to the showrunners, the producers, the network, the studio. I have found that because of my preparation, the show ends up being very much what I imagined it would be. I haven't had the experience that I've heard of a final cut that is very different from a director's cut. That's not what I meant at all. Yeah. And I think, again, that just comes down to seeing it and preparing it. But again, it's not your weird little feature baby where you make every call, and you have to be ready to, let those changes happen.
But it sounds to me like, if you're especially thinking about the transitions, because I interviewed Jill Danienica, who edited Switched at Birth, and she talked a lot about, you can see when a director is thinking, we're going to start here and then move over to here, and kind of lays it all out. It sounds like you're looking at it with that kind of vision.
I believe editors are way better at that than I am. And so I think about the first shot. If I know what I want the first shot to be, they will do a better job putting everything together after that, but it gives them a place to start. And I've talked to editors about that. And look, they might find something different, and I'm always open to that, because I believe part of being a good director is knowing that your cinematographer, your editor, your production designer, they're better at that job than you are. And they should be.
Yeah, don't try to do all the jobs.
No. Even though I had to do all the jobs in my features sometimes.
So you know the jobs. That's helpful.
I much prefer not to. And so I have an idea of what it should be. And usually I would say those first and last shots do end up in the cut the way that I imagine them. But yeah, I don't like to micromanage beyond that first and last shot. But opening and closing images are so important. They're so much a part of the story.
Yeah. Do you think you're paid comparable to your male counterparts?
I have no idea. I'm so happy to get paid and not be paying to make things.
So gratitude is always a big factor.
Yeah.
Do you negotiate?
My agents do. I don't. I know that it's an important part of what's going on in the world with women and with equal pay, but I will be honest, I don't involve myself very much in that. My manager said to me once, he's like, "You're so weird. You don't seem to care about money." And
because I expect you to
so
care
you
about
care
it.
about the money.
Yes.
Let me do my thing. And maybe this is part of what keeps women down. But yeah, I'm just so grateful to be working and to have a job.
That's what I hear all the time. We're so grateful to be in.
Well, because there's definitely, the imposter syndrome, where you're like, because it's such a wonderful job, and I love my job, and so I have those moments where I think, can this be real?
How'd I get so lucky?
Yeah, and maybe that's a bad attitude as a woman, but as an artist, I think it works pretty well.
Oh, for sure. I think in the big picture, we need to figure out how to be grateful and ask for all the money.
Yeah. But I think, the DGA is a wonderful union, and once we start having the numbers, once we get into the 50-50 world, I think that the equal pay is going to be a natural progression. It's really about getting
the numbers
up. Less about individual contracts. Especially in advertising, I would love to see more women. I know they're making a huge push with Free the Bid, and I see a lot of companies. I've been doing a lot more bids lately. I think a lot of companies are trying to bring women into the fold.
I haven't heard of Free the Bid. What's that?
Free the Bid is a kind of collective of commercial directors, female directors. So it's from all the production companies, and it's a website that agencies and clients can go on and see who are the women out there directing. And it's from huge to small.
Great.
You have to be approved, and so it's a really selective but all-inclusive group of female commercial directors.
I love that.
It's great.
Yeah. How do you think we'll get to the 50-50 numbers?
I did this program with Tribeca last year, and Paula Weinstein, she said when she was an executive in the 70s, it was all about counting. Oh, I'm the only woman in the room. And there was a certain pride in that. And I think all of us have that, like, oh, I'm one of the 15%. And I think that is a terrible attitude.
Yeah.
And I think we need to not be happy to be the only woman in the room. And we need to be helpful and supportive and understand that it's not a good thing to be part of an elite percentage, and we need to lift each other up and help each other. And there's a lot of organizations that are working towards that. And so I would urge all working women in this field to be a part of those, the DGA steering committee, all the diversity programs that the networks are doing. I have a friend, Tessa Blake, who's running the AFI Directing Workshop for Women, and she's doing a lot of outreach. And so I would say just being involved in that way. So you're not trying to hold on to your little special unicorn. Yes. You're trying to make a field of unicorns.
In a field of wildflowers.
Yeah. And it's funny about the preparation. Like, I have had, wow, you're so prepared, you're over-prepared. Be over-prepared.
Yeah.
Because
be impeccable.
I have seen women go into a situation unprepared, not be perfect. And look, it might not be fair, but at this point we have to be better. We have to be the best.
You get one chance.
Because there's a funny thing that happens, and it's an unconscious bias. But I think if a woman comes in and does a bad job, it's like, well, I guess I'm not going to hire a woman director again. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really make sense. But, there are men who do bad jobs all the time. And you don't say, well, I guess I'm never going to hire a man director again.
Right, because it's ridiculous.
So I would say, again, do your homework, ladies. Like, if you get that chance to go up to bat, be so prepared that you make everybody look good. And I'm always rooting, I went up for a job recently, and another director who happens to be a woman that I know got it, and I was like, right on. At least it was her.
Yeah.
and so I think for women it's very important to band together. And we look at the advertising world, and I went to this conference in San Francisco that was talking about the 3% number in advertising, and the funny thing is agencies are mostly run by women, and the producers are women. So I don't think it's men being sexist. I think
it's everybody
being
sexist.
And it's women too. Yeah. And we just need to help each other.
The unconscious bias runs deep, I think.
It does.
And it's funny what you said about being the only one in the room. I even wrote this in my bio on my website because I used to be the only one in the room all the time, and I thought it was great. And then one day I looked around and I was like, this is a problem.
Yeah.
Like, this is a symptom
Yeah.
of a really big problem.
Yeah.
And I think it's the moment of having that awakening of, wait a second.
I mean, we're talking about, being a woman in this industry, but I also had a feeling, I did a panel in October about being a woman director, and afterwards I just said, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'll go to a panel if I'm invited as a director. Mm-hmm. I don't want to go to a panel as a woman director, because you end up talking about all the problems of being a woman and not about your work and your art. And I've seen it a lot where these panels kind of devolve into complaining about the situation, which doesn't make women look great. No. And I think it's important that the conversation is out there, but I think women doing really good, solid work and talking about their work is also very, very important.
Yeah. I would love nothing more than to get past the whole conversation and get to where we're just talking about the work.
Here's a director.
How about that? Let's talk about her work.
She did something.
Now, you have 3 kids and a husband who's also in this business. How have you negotiated your life?
Well, if you Google me, you'll see that 90% of my pictures on the internet are me hugely pregnant or just postpartum nursing. And
you're kind of pregnant all the time with 3 kids, right?
Pregnant all the time.
I can attest. Always breastfeeding, always pregnant.
And so, it's about incorporating it into your work. And, I made While We Were Here when I was so pregnant, they almost didn't let me fly home from Italy. And again, it was an instance of, wow, I'm so special. And then I said, no, I'm a woman. A lot of women choose to have children, and you can still work if you're having a healthy pregnancy. Mm-hmm. And so again, not making it a big deal and just incorporating it into your life. My friend Sean Hader made a movie called Tallulah last year, and she also was pregnant while directing. And that's what it should be. Again, the normalization of the fact that it's not an illness.
Right.
It's not something that means you have to go lock yourself away. It's a part of being a woman if you choose to have children.
And you're kind of wildly creative.
Oh, yeah.
While that's happening. It's a superpower, if nothing else.
It is a superpower. And Ali Wong, I love what she's doing. I don't know if you've seen her stand up. She just did a whole stand-up tour, very pregnant, which is it's a first. Awesome. And she's writing on Fresh Off the Boat. And, again, it's that unconscious bias of like, oh, do you have pregnancy brain? Or, do you have mommy brain? We need to eradicate those kind of things. And it doesn't mean you have to work. You can also put your feet up and eat cartons of ice cream, and that is perfectly acceptable. But I think both things need to be acceptable. And I think we do need to work towards daycare and, maternal support. I happen to have that. My husband is really wonderful with the kids and the babies, and most of the time our schedules allow one of us to work very intensely while the other one is just with the kids.
Oh, great.
It's happened that, I'm in Vancouver, he's in Atlanta, and in those instances we're very lucky that my parents can step in and help. And and I recognize that that's a very fortunate situation that when people say, how do you do that? And I'm like, my mommy.
My mommy takes care of us.
It's amazing. You're so amazing. I'm like, yeah. And my mom is too. So having a support system, having a community is very helpful. And I definitely wouldn't have kept having children if I didn't have that in place.
So you were going to say one more thing about
I was going to say part of balancing, life in the industry and family is making a choice sometimes to choose family over work. And that's a very hard, almost impossible thing to do. So we decided 4 years ago that every summer we would take this 3-week vacation to the same place, and that nothing would get in the way. And we both tell our agents, don't even tell us if a great job
we don't want to know
during this time. We don't want to know. And I realize that, that is a luxury in some ways to be able to say that. But it also is a necessity.
Yeah.
Because you spend a lot of your life waiting and putting things on hold because you're waiting for the right time and everything to come together. And so treating a little period of time that is a vacation as a part of your job is something that I found really helpful in my life. Because, part of my job is being a mom and is running the family.
Yeah.
And it's very easy in this business to always be beholden and never to take time off. So
you have to make it happen.
Just make it happen.
And I'm realizing now that my kids are getting older, it seems like grade school takes forever, and then suddenly it's high school, and then you're counting down. It's like 3 years, 2 years. We have to take family vacations now. There's no waiting around.
Yeah.
It's going to be over.
It goes fast. That's what they all say.
It's so true. You don't believe it when you're doing diapers. You don't believe it. You're like, because every day takes a year and a half.
It's so slow.
But then suddenly it takes off.
Yeah.
Okay, are you a success?
Am I a success? It's such a hard question because I think as an artist, it's important never to think of oneself as a success, because part of what motivates the creation of art is that feeling that you need to be better and you need to do more, and you still haven't told a story that you need to tell, and you still have never done anything perfectly. And so I find that striving for success is a big motivating factor in my life. At the same time, it is important to step back and love yourself and pat yourself on the back sometimes for the successes that you've had. And it's a struggle. I think, I've talked a lot about the disparity in the commercial world, and I've noticed that in commercials, a huge part of your job is assuring these companies that are putting millions of dollars into a campaign that you're going to do a fantastic job. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that comes easier to men. Women are much more likely to take on a humble persona and I hope it works out. We'll do everything we can to make it work out.
That doesn't inspire confidence.
It doesn't. And I think acknowledging your success and being proud of the successes that you have is part of becoming more successful. And I think women do need to realize, especially as a director, that your job is to make people feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. Everybody is afraid. Everybody is worried they're going to lose their job. Everyone is terrified that they're going to lose money. And if you cannot go in there and assure them that you are going to lead this ship and you are going to make money and you are going to do a fantastic job, you're not doing your job. And so I do think women need to embrace that part of the job.
I got this.
I got this. And, we do tend to downplay our achievements and our successes. And yeah, it's like at this point in my career, I feel incredibly qualified. And I'm just starting to realize that that's a part of my job, mm-hmm. is making people feel good.
That's really good advice.
Good.
Are you a badass?
Am I a badass? Sure.
What does that word mean to you?
I don't know. Badass is it's a complicated word, isn't it?
But it sounds good.
It sounds good. I mean, to me, it's immediately I think of someone in a leather suit driving a motorcycle, which I am not. But I think being a badass is a good thing. I just don't know what it means.
Like, I'm pro
badass.
Do you have any other advice you would give to young women just starting out?
One piece of advice I have for young storytellers is to break the archetypes in your storytelling, because it's not just about us as the people behind the scenes equalizing the numbers. It's also about changing the way audiences see roles. So
yes,
I always say, if you're writing a doctor, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a man, make that doctor a woman. If you have a film director in your film, just go ahead and make it a black woman, or or any time you're writing a role and you feel that it's a cliche. And of course, there's a story where you need a white male doctor, or you need, that archetypal film director. But if you have that opportunity to break down the stereotypes, we have to remember we work in a very powerful medium. And what we make goes onto the screens and affects the new generations. And I think that I see it all the time. Even we're women, we're trying to advance women in the workplace, equality, and then we go ahead and we write these stories that fall into all the typical cliches and do nothing to influence the world in a wider way. And I think that's something that you can do. It doesn't cost any money. When you are writing things, think about that.
Yes. Help people see themselves.
It will change. It will change people entering the workforce. It will change the perceptions of little girls and boys. My husband's mother always tells a funny story. She was a PhD, and she took her son, my husband, to the doctor when he was little, and they went into the bathroom, and the doctor was in the women's restroom because she was a woman. She said, "Look, it's the doctor." And he goes, "Well, no, that's a nurse." She said, "No, it's a doctor." No, it's a nurse, because men are doctors. And she said, "I'm your mother, and I'm a doctor." And that, to me, speaks to the power of the media and the medium that we work in.
Yes.
And so, let's change that, ladies.
Yes. When I was a kid, the riddle was a man and his son gets in a car accident, and they go to the hospital, and the surgeon comes out and said, I can't operate, that's my son. Because the doctor was the mother. Mm-hmm. And in the 70s, we were all scratching our heads for an hour as to who that doctor could be. We couldn't figure it out. And I gave that riddle to my kids, and they got it right away.
Yeah.
So something's changing.
Yeah.
Thanks to Grey's Anatomy, really.
Yeah. Shonda.
What else?
Be positive. Be excited. And do your homework. Work hard. Set a good example. And yeah, confidence is very, very important, and it's something a lot of women lack. And I see in the new generation of young women, I see a new confidence that is really exciting. I was just chatting with this 23-year-old filmmaker who did her first short the other day. It's going to Tribeca, and she was so assured and felt very natural in her role as a young, beautiful woman who happens to be a director. And it was exciting to me because it felt like there is a big change coming.
It does feel like it. I've been interviewing a lot of young indie creators who are just doing it.
Yeah.
It's not even occurring to them that there are obstacles.
Yeah. Yeah. That, like I said, about not having the archetypes, and going into acting, which is something I didn't really like, but I knew I wanted to be in film and be a storyteller, and kind of finding my way into directing. I think that's going to be something that is changing. I think young women who want to be directors will become directors at a young age, which is the best way to do it, because then you have more time to practice.
Yeah. And
more time to hone your skill.
So just do it.
Just do it. Someone said that once, I think.
Somebody. I don't know. Anything else you wanted to say on this topic?
I would say for younger people who are just starting, embracing failure. Failure is how you learn. And film is a strange medium because the pressure is so high that failure is looked down upon. So I would say when you start making work, don't be afraid of experimenting and making little projects that are disasters. It's much better you do that when the stakes aren't high, when there's not a lot of money involved.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I wish I'd known. When I first started, I was so afraid. I was making these tiny little things, and I was so afraid of failure. And when I look back, it's the things that didn't work that really helped me grow and helped me know what I wanted to do. So that's always my pat advice for young artists.
Screw it up.
Screw it up. And don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to be perfect in the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, when the stakes are low, when you're working in shorts and making your own stuff. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, A Herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Kat Coiro for telling us her story, and special thanks to Jonathan Lucas for editing, Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe and leave a review. And of course on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out, for added features, bios of our guests, the blog, and the merch. You can also follow us on Facebook, on Twitter at Other50%, and Instagram at Other50% Podcast. And don't forget to check out The Other 50%, A Herstory of Tech. Thanks for listening. See you next time.